Hello, I'm BMillzebub, and welcome to my channel. Today is part 4 of a 4-part series where I and the Bible Belt Atheist go through the bite model to determine if the Catholic Church is a cult. Today's video is brought to you by the letter E for emotional control, so let's get on into it. Instill irrational fears or phobias of questioning or leaving the group.
All right, today we're going to start this episode off with your friendly neighborhood Black Spider-Man with emotional control, and that reads, instill irrational fears or phobias of questioning or leaving the group. This one I can really attest to very easily because of, once again, my mother. My mother, as you guys should know, she is planning on becoming a nun at the end of this year. And she came up to me, believe it was the last day that we were down at the monastery in Georgia. And she came in my room and was crying very much. And she was saying how she doesn't know if she wants to be a nun, or if God's calling her to be a nun, truly, because she feels like if she's going to enter into the monastery, then she feels like she's going to be giving up her free will, and that because she has to ask for everything. She has to ask to call somebody on the phone. She has to ask to do laundry. She has to ask to go somewhere. She has to ask to do all these different things. And I feel like I'm being a child, or going back to being a child, by doing this. And I haven't talked to her yet about my opinion on it. But, my opinion on that is that is, in context of this, that's very much emotional control, because, as she said, she feels like she's giving up her own free will. And to me, she is my mother. My mother and I have not had a very good relationship over my life, for a few different reasons that I don't really want to talk about right now. But it's not that good. But in my opinion, it almost sounds like when she says she feels like she's giving up her free will. Of course, yeah, she said she feels like she's becoming a child, becoming a child again. But she also, in my opinion, it sounds like she's becoming, for lack of a better term, a slave to her mother superior and her other, again, for lack of a better term, higher ranking nuns. So in that way, yeah, it's definitely not good in the way for the Catholic Church in the way of emotional control. And there are several other examples I could give, but I'm going to try not to hog Bubba's channel. So what do you have?
Yeah, it definitely does kind of use that a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of Catholics out there in the world, so it's not like a small congregation where it's really easy to kind of hold everyone together. Not everybody knows everybody else in the congregation, so it's not particularly strict, but let's consider it from the perspective of my mother, who feels like she can't consider herself Catholic until the church cleans up its behavior. Particularly with the numerous child rape issues going on in the church. Between the child rape and the cover-ups, she doesn't feel like she can be considered a Catholic. But I mean, as much as it'll probably actually do nothing, since formal defection was abolished. About formal defection was abolished in like 2008, I think. So as much as it'll only be a symbolic gesture, my mother won't even take that step because she's afraid of what that'll mean with her standing with God or whatever. Even though it's just her rejecting the church, not necessarily her beliefs, because she's got this weird kind of mentality where they're more or less the same. Labels some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong. Yeah, the Catholic Church definitely does this. They definitely label certain emotions as wrong, sinful, whatever. Chief among them would be like sexual lust. There's not a whole lot the Catholic Church despises as far as emotions go more than sexual desire, particularly if you're not married. And even then, they probably don't really care for it because that would to them be a form of idolatry, and that's a whole other thing. Yeah, the Catholic Church definitely doesn't like it. They're also not big fans of anger, so they really kind of push you away from feeling those things. Those are the two particularly big ones. Are really lust of any kind, but particularly sexual lust and anger. What have you got, BBA?
Like you said, anger. Um, anger is, they, from my experience at least, they do admit, that anger is a part of human nature. But it's not, anger is a part of human nature. It's normal to get angry, but to stay angry is, they see it as some sort of sin. Again, that's just from my experience, but
yeah, that's mine as well. Teach emotion stopping techniques to prevent anger, homesickness.
To teach these kind of techniques, like emotion stopping with anger, homesickness. I mean, a big one is prayer. That's a big one too. Prayer, confessions, penances. That's a big one that they use to try and help you with dealing with sins. But in the way of thought stopping, though,
oh, it's emotion stopping.
Yeah, the big one that I would say is guilt tripping people. Telling people that that they're pretty much they're sinful, and that they've been sinful ever since they were, I guess, conceived. I can't remember if it's either since they were conceived or since they were born, but because of Adam and Eve, that they are inherently sinful, and that a lot of their stuff that they contract, so to speak, from over the course of their life, no matter how old they are, is inherently because of Adam and Eve, from the eating of the apple. So it, like I said, it's a lot of it is guilt tripping people. I know that's not really the best example, but I don't really know of a good example to give on that. So I don't know. I'd have to turn it over to you.
Yeah, the funny thing about the whole Adam and Eve and original sin thing is that Catholics don't believe that anything outside of the Gospels is literally true. So they don't literally believe in Adam and Eve. And in fact, if I were to pull out my catechism that's up on the top shelf there, it would say that while Adam and Eve were not real, and I'm paraphrasing here, it does come down to a primeval event where the first sin was committed,
Yeah, and
which
that's what I
is
was gonna.
weird. But, you know, guilt tripping and prayer are definitely two big ones that they'll use. And it's a weird kind of feedback loop with the guilt tripping one, because it'll make you feel worse, and then you'll feel more sinful, and then you'll feel it just keeps cycling when you do it
Yeah.
that way, which is interesting. But hey, you know what? I'm not the guy that came up with all this nonsense, so don't
Yeah.
don't look to me for all the answers. Promote feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness. Yeah, that's kind of the Catholic Church's bread and butter right there. And I mean, even on the last thing, you mentioned guilt tripping. Yeah, I mean, there's a good reason that using what's very commonly called Catholic guilt, is such a well-known thing. I mean, every religion has its own kind of variant of that, but the one that's really well known throughout the world is Catholic guilt. It's literally its own trope. There was one point where my mother said, "Whatever happened to good old fashioned Catholic guilt?" It's like, Jesus Christ, why do you want that sort of thing? I don't know. I don't know. What do you got, man?
Yeah. Kind of going back to, with like I had said, and then you mentioned with guilt tripping. Um, you know, feelings of unworthiness are another big one
Oh
within
yeah.
the Catholic Church. What is that? What is that thing that they say? Lord, I am not worthy, but say the word, and my soul shall be healed, or something like that.
I remember that.
Yeah, so it's like unworthiness is a huge one within the Catholic Church, and like I said, and that's a big example of it. But unworthiness is, or the feeling of unworthiness is a huge thing in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, it's built in pretty good into the old Catholic doctrine. Shower you with praise and attention, love bombing.
Definitely is within the Catholic Church. And I would attribute this most to the younger grades of faith formation. Or if you guys aren't sure what faith formation is, that's basically the Catholic version of Sunday school. So a lot of that would be attributed more, or not really attributed, practiced more within the lower grades, like elementary school grades, like, second, third, fourth grade in in uh in faith formation. Because if you guys don't know about faith formation, faith formation goes all the way from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. So, or at least it did at the church that I went to faith formation at. So yeah, like I said, a lot of the quote unquote love bombing would happen a lot within the lower grades. And that's the only example I can really think of where that would be majorly applicable. So I don't know. What do you have, Bella?
Yeah, that'd probably be more applicable to the younger kids, who are, in my day we called it Sunday school. There was none of that faith formation or whatever. But it also might occur in the groups where it's adults that are coming to the Catholic Church. I wouldn't be sure though, because I've never gone to one of those. It would have been totally pointless for me, having grown up Catholic. So those are going to be, the places that you'll really find it. Um, And at the end of Mass, there's always, at least in my experience, part of the Mass where, the priest said something, peace be with you, and everybody shakes hands and says, peace be with you. People that are new to a congregation, or people who haven't been seen in a long time, or something like that, they're going to get more attention than Bob that you saw there last week, and the previous 62 weeks before that. So yeah, if this is the first time in a year that you've seen Mary at church, you're gonna talk to Mary a bit more. Make her feel more welcome to get her to keep coming back. So yeah, that's it's not as extreme as a lot of other cults out there, but it's there.
Yeah, it's kind of like with I guess what Catholics would call the twice a year Catholics, where they just come for Christmas and Easter. There people like that are going to be, given a lot more attention during the peace trading time, if that's what it's called, and that happens during communion, by the way. But yeah,
I thought it was more towards the end. I don't know. It's been years since I've been to Mass, so
yeah, it happens during communion, and yeah, so that would be an example of it.
Threaten your friends and family. No, I've never had an experience with this. Maybe you're more conservative, willing to be violent Catholic will do it, but as far as I know, there's nothing in Catholic doctrine about threatening your friends or family. Whether you're having doubts or considering leaving, I've never heard of anything like this. What about you?
Yeah, kind of the same as you. I mean, I've never heard of somebody threatening the friends or family of another parishioner for religious reasons. I've just never heard of it. So yeah.
Now, if we were talking about 400 years ago, this would be an entirely different conversation, except it'd be you receiving the threat, and it would actually be the death penalty because, yeah.
Well, if you're talking about 400 years ago, it wouldn't really be that. It'd be more of that.
Yeah, and the punishment for apostasy back then was still death. So, fortunately, this isn't that. This is not 400 years ago. Shun you if you disobey or disbelieve.
Well, I mean, I'd be a great example of that. I mean, no, it not that I've ever heard of. Now, may it happen? Yeah, it could happen every once in a while, but that's more of a Jehovah's Witness kind of thing. To shun, but that's, like I said, it might happen every once in a while, but that's more on extreme cases. But in my case, from my experience, I've never experienced, somebody shunning me for disbelieving. Actually, in fact, whenever I was down in Georgia visiting in the monastery with my mother, I was obviously in a separate part of the monastery. I wasn't back in the cloister, but the Mother Superior and the Mother Superior and the Novice Mistress, they're two of the nuns that are able, they're not really able, that are allowed to exit the cloister. And they come out to me and talk to me every once in a while. I actually got into a conversation with the two of them together one night when I was actually getting ready to download some more Behemoth songs. So definitely not anything with shunning. And in my experience, I've never shunned anybody who, personally, I never shunned anybody who disbelieved. But what do you have?
Yeah, I don't have any experience with shunning anybody, and I don't have any experience with being shunned either. I mean, I did lose some friends after I left the church. I don't know. I've lost contact with probably about 20 people, like all at once.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
but I consider those more shallow friendships. Oh well, he's not Catholic. I don't want to be around him. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I don't want you around either. Because chances are all you're going to do is try to proselytize to me, and well, I'm smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dick way to look at it, but well,
It's the truth. Yeah.
yeah, But not only am I smarter, I mean, in many cases that is true, but I'm also more knowledgeable than them. So that's another big thing that kind of goes into it before everybody, starts saying what a massive dick I am. Uh, but yeah, as far as I know, there isn't any kind of doctrine on shunning in the Catholic Church.
Yeah. No. And if there is, there's none that I'm aware of.
Teach that there is no happiness or peace outside the group. Yes, the Catholic Church definitely does do this. I mean, how often do you hear that, atheists just have to be miserable coming from a Catholic? And there was a Catholic friend of mine who actually said this to my face. How miserable must you be right now? I'm not, but yeah, you are. You're miserable. Thank you for telling me what my emotional state is. I appreciate that because I am not self-aware, as you know, and am unable to, articulate how I am feeling, which is not miserable. In fact, I actually am happier now as an atheist that I'm not having doctrine that more or less forces me to feel guilt, shame, and self-hatred. I don't have that anymore. So I get to actually like me, and it's a good feeling. It really is. Catholics, you should try it sometime. What do you got, bud?
Yeah. I mean, I've got pretty much the same thing as you. A lot of them, now I've never had somebody tell me straight to my face, hey, you're an atheist. You must be, one of the most miserable people on earth, or most miserable feeling person on earth. I've never had somebody directly say that to my face, but, that's definitely, sadly, it's definitely big within the church. Definitely not uncommon to see somebody tell somebody who's a Catholic telling another person who's not a Catholic, such as us, such as atheists. A Catholic telling an atheist or a non-believer that they must be some of the most miserable, or one of the most miserable feeling person on earth, because they don't have the love of God in their life.
We've got God-shaped holes in our heart.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because considering God is bigger than infinite, wouldn't the hole in our heart be larger than our heart itself? just throwing that out there. We should be dead from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Should, but hey. It's the Catholics. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Catholic logic. All right, so as you could see from the last screen, we have a final score of 4.5 out of 8. Personally, I've been looking at this a little bit on and off previously, but I personally thought it would be a little bit higher, maybe a 5, 5.25. But 4.5 does good. The big thing that made me think it would be a little bit higher is because of when I was talking about my mother with being in the monastery. But I mean, that's only 1/8 of it. So yeah, I don't know. What do you have on it?
I actually thought it was going to be a little lower, to be honest. And that's because I've been looking at it for the past week or so as well. But I had forgotten a few things that you brought up, so that yeah, that it makes sense that the score is actually a little higher than I thought it would be. But this is still nowhere close to thought control. So um,
No.
yeah, down from being full blown cult to cult-ish, along with behavior and information control. They're just this one is cultish as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's not full blown cult, but definitely on the road to being a cult.
All right, that'll do it for this one, though. Next week, BBA and I will do a post mortem of sorts to see where the Catholic Church lands on the bite model as a whole. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, you all are as well. But until then, if you enjoyed the video, please leave it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you're feeling particularly generous, please feel free to give me some support over on Patreon. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, linked below, to keep up with all my comings and goings, and join my Discord for a chance to talk to yours truly. Take it easy, everyone, and I will see you all in the next one.